Sarasota County Bar Association is proud to continue its partnership with the Education Channel of Sarasota County to bring you the Law in Sarasota.
Welcome to Law in Sarasota. This is a program about lawyers, judges, and the legal profession, underwritten by grants from the Sarasota County Bar Association and the Community Foundation of Sarasota. We will attempt to give our viewers insight into how members of the bar and the judiciary provide service not just to clients and litigants, but how they make positive contributions to our community by involvement in nonprofit organizations, service clubs, their churches and synagogues. However, for this program, we're going to introduce you to one of our newest judges. Now, there's 31 judges in our three-county circuit, which is composed of Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto counties. 10 of those are county judges, 21 are circuit judges. 12 of these are women. Last year, 3 seasoned judges retired. This opened vacancies that the governor filled with 3 appointments. Now, few of our viewers will know them, although they've been active in their profession and known by most of their peers in the bar. They are an enigma to the rest of us. Now, we'll have other programs introducing the other 2, but today we're going to have a conversation with Circuit Judge Terri Dees, also known as Terri. Welcome, Judge Dees.
Thank you, Judge Hayworth.
So now you're a judge.
I am.
Let's talk about what that means. I'm going to get into a little bit of your history, kind of a biographical summary of what you've been doing the last several years. First, tell me, are you married?
I am. I'm married. I've been married for working on 14 years.
Got any young'uns?
I do. I have a daughter, Taylor, who is 9. She's in the 4th grade. I have a stepdaughter, Shelby, who is 17. She's a senior in high school.
Okay, so where were you raised?
I was born and raised in Palmetto.
All right, and where'd you go to school?
Elementary school, I went to Bradenton Christian, which is in Bradenton, as you could have surmised. For high school, I transferred to Palmetto High, where I graduated from.
All right, now, when you were in high school, tell us some of the things that you did, hobbies, things you can tell the public that you did. They might find interesting. Sports, activities that you were involved with?
I was involved in student government. I was also involved in sports. I played softball and volleyball from a young age, from Bradenton Christian all the way through Palmetto High School. So sports.
Were you any good?
Yeah, I was really good.
Okay.
No, I'm very competitive. I was never the star, but I always competed very strongly.
Yeah, well, I played football, and my coach told me that, he said, Hayworth, you've got a great career on the bench. But anyway, in high school, you worked with some children that had some disabilities, I hear.
I did. I did a lot of volunteer work with the Key Club, the Keyettes actually, and I worked with Orange Ridge Bullock, which was a school that had a significant population of children with special needs.
Like a lot of judges, you come from a legal family.
I do. My father is still practicing law. I won't age him, but he has had a significant career and a long career and a wonderful career in downtown Bradenton, and he is still actively practicing.
And that's Bill Kaklis.
That is.
All right. And what was his nature of his practice?
He did primarily civil litigation, a lot of real estate, and some commercial litigation.
So you kind of saw law up close and personal in his law firm, I would imagine.
I did. I spent a lot of time at his law firm, and as a result of that, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in the clerk's office and the courthouse growing up. So anytime I didn't have after-school sports activities from probably late in elementary school on, I would go to my dad's office after school. And I would do everything from cleaning up the kitchen and putting away the cheese and crackers to taking things to the post office, the clerk's office, the banks, the title companies. So I spent a lot of time in the downtown area as a child.
When did you think you might be a lawyer?
Probably shortly after my dad told me not to be.
You were rebellious then.
I'll leave that one without an answer. I always wanted to be a judge. And obviously part of that was being an attorney. And so it was always in the back of my mind. I would say I probably made the firm decision to go to law school my first or second year in undergrad.
Okay. And where did you go to undergraduate?
I went to the University of Florida. I moved up there when I was 17 years old. I started summer school right after I graduated from high school.
So what were your majors?
I majored in journalism and communications. That's what I got my bachelor's in.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because in order to get a degree in that, a major in that, you have to have certain skills that may help you as a lawyer. What were they?
Writing, reading and understanding, the ability to convey well, publicly speak, articulate what you're trying to say, and really just have the ability to put your thoughts into words, because when you do get into law school, essays and a lot of the writing is very, very important. And it becomes easy to you. It's not quite as scary when you get into those types of exams and assignments.
You know, we may have viewers of this program that are students and looking to go to college. They may be middle school or high school. And I think we need to make it clear that the law is a literate profession. You have to be able to communicate in writing. You have to be able to spell. You can't be using the shortcuts you use on Twitter. You have to be able to make people understand clearly what you're saying. You have to understand syntax. You have to understand when to capitalize. All those basic skills are very important for people that are going to be a lawyer. And so your undergraduate degree helps you with that. So then you decide to go to law school.
I did. I decided to go to law school probably about halfway through undergrad. And to back up, my daughter's in the 4th grade, and we've actually been talking a lot this week about essays and speech contests. And she is so excited, and I'm really building in her that excitement about being a wonderful writer, being an effective writer, and also that ability to stand up and public speak. So from an early age, you can really start focusing on that ability with the writing and just that public speaking part of you. But going forward, yes, I decided to go to law school. I did as everyone else did. I sat and I did the reviews for the LSAT and took the LSAT, and fingers crossed to get into the University of Florida.
So what subjects did you enjoy when you were in law school?
My favorite class, actually, which has nothing to do with anything I've done in my career, was products liability. I was very intrigued by it, and I loved my professor. Of course, I was interested just from a legal standpoint in constitutional law, and then I also enjoyed criminal law. I did enjoy juvenile and family, but just while in law school, if I had to pick one, I would say products liability. I was just so intrigued by the whole concept.
Well, that's interesting. And then when did you graduate law school and get your JD?
So I graduated law school in 1996, and I sat for the Georgia bar, and I sat for the Florida bar that same year.
Why would you think about Georgia?
Well, it was a time in my life when there was a lot going on in Atlanta. The Summer Olympics were there that summer. In fact, I had to take the bar exam in February while I was still in my last semester of law school because of the Summer Olympics. So I flew up and took the bar up there. I really wanted to move to Atlanta. I wanted to move to Atlanta before I decided to go to law school to try to use my degree in public relations, journalism, communications. So I sort of had that goal. Additionally, I was working through the application process for the FBI, and the field office I was dealing with was the Atlanta office.
Okay, so you decided not to go to the FBI, and then you took the Florida bar?
Well, I didn't decide not to go into the FBI. They were in some sort of hiring hiatus. I'm not sure if it was a hiring freeze or not. So they got me through the application process and told me to hurry up and wait. I did take I was always planning on taking the Florida bar. That was part of the deal. That was an agreement I had with my father. So I did. I took the Florida bar that summer while I was still waiting for any information from the FBI.
Okay, so you graduate law school. What's your first job?
My first job was to pass the bar exam, which thankfully I did on the first try. And then I ended up taking a job with one of my father's long-term friends, actually from law school, John Pitcher, who was a practicing attorney here in downtown Sarasota.
What kind of cases did he give you?
He did almost all criminal defense, and so I was working with him on the criminal cases. Just out of law school, I was helping him on the misdemeanors and appearing in court on his behalf. Just sort of waiting to figure out what I wanted to do as a permanent career.
All right, and then you went someplace else, I take it.
I was lucky enough to be able to travel a little bit through Europe. My parents were both very generous and allowed me several weeks to go visit with some friends that were living and working over there. So I took some time. I enjoyed several countries, and when I came back, I put the old feet to the ground and started pounding the pavement looking for a job, a full-time job.
Yeah, we've all been there. So where'd you wind up?
I ended up getting a job offer from John Weifenbach. He is an attorney who's been in downtown Bradenton for a significant period of time. He, like me, lived in Palmetto for quite some time, although he was a transplant from Key West. And I began working with John in January of 1997.
What kind of work did you do?
Coming into the practice, I did, well, what most associates do, everything nobody else wanted to do, but that would include criminal, juvenile, family law, a little bit of county civil, traffic citations, a little bit of everything.
Well, you're now assigned to the juvenile division, but you had some experience with that before.
I did. I practiced approximately, I'd say the first 8 or 9 years of my career. I was in the juvenile division representing both children accused of committing crimes or delinquent acts, and also representing parents in the dependency system.
Okay, so you're one of the few people that have had that experience. I don't think there's been another judge appointed who had any experience with dependency court, which is very fortunate given your current position. And I think we should note, too, that of the 3 judges who were appointed, 2 of them are Manatee County residents, and 1 of them is Sarasota. And is customary, on their first rotation, the judges are sent to a division outside of their county. So you're in Sarasota, as is Judge Eiten, who is a Manatee resident, and then Hunter Carroll, who's the 3rd one, is a Sarasota fella. He's up in Manatee. So that's one way to help orient them, new judges, and get them in a position where they feel more comfortable, not having to see some of the people they associated with earlier in their career. So now you are in the juvenile division. What is the juvenile division?
So the juvenile division basically is made up of the following: the delinquency court, the dependency court, and then we also do some adoptions and some children in need of services, family in need of services, to try to keep folks out of the dependency and the delinquency system. So the delinquency system would be if a young person under the age 18 is alleged to have committed a crime. That child, that youth, would be alleged to have committed a delinquent act. And if that child was arrested, she would end up in front of the juvenile judge, and the process would begin from the very beginning stage of finding probable cause and determining whether or not that child should be held in a secure detention setting or be released to his or her parents. And then the case moves forward much like it would in an adult system, except a lot quicker and without the opportunity of a jury.
How about the dependency side?
Dependency court, that is something that's probably a lot of confusion about. People end up in dependency court when it has been alleged that their child or their children are in some sort of danger. They're in imminent danger. There's been abuse, neglect, abandonment. And most of the time, our Department of Children and Family will try to put services in the home to try to offer assistance to these families that are more or less in crisis or in need due to substance abuse, domestic violence, any number of things.
Mental health is big.
Mental health.
Yeah.
And at that point, if those efforts have failed, or if it's such an emergency where, quite frankly, no amount of assistance will work, the Department of Children and Families will come in and say that these children need to be removed for their own safety. And if that happens, they have the right, the parents have the right to be in front of a judge within 24 hours, 365 days a year, to determine whether or not the department made the right decision.
So the department will actually remove those children that they believe are at risk of abandonment or abuse or whatever. And then you have a hearing where you determine you agree there's probable cause or there's not. If so, that child will typically go to a relative or a friend, or if there's none available, a foster family.
That's correct. Most of the time, the department tries to find somewhere that the child or the children, and in many occasions there are many kids that need emergency placement, sometimes at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But the department generally makes any available option their first option of a family or a friend to place the children so they feel comfortable while the case works itself out. If they can't find anyone, we have the youth shelter here in Sarasota, which will take emergency kids, and then of course obviously the foster care system.
Well, as you know, I was in the division that you now have before my retirement, and I was so pleased to see somebody with your background coming in there. Let's talk a little bit about who the players are in a dependency case, because in a typical case, for example, in delinquency, you have a prosecutor, and you have the defense attorney. But in dependency court, when you walk in that courtroom and a case is called, talk about the number of people that are involved in that.
All right. So it can be a little intimidating or shocking if you're an attorney who's never practiced in that particular courtroom, or even a judge who's never sat in that particular courtroom, because in a traditional courtroom, you've got, you know, the state and the defense, or you've got the plaintiff and the respondent. You've got two parties that are clearly at odds with each other. In the dependency courtroom, you will have the investigative unit, which is through the Department of Children and Families. You may also have a case management unit that has been working with this family, also under the umbrella of the Department of Children and Families. You'll have an attorney representing the Department of Children and Families. They're known as the Attorneys for Children's Legal Services. Then you'll have a mom, an attorney for the mom, a dad, an attorney for the dad. There may be more fathers based on the number of kids, so you may have another 1, 2, 3 additional attorneys.
Right.
So each parent is entitled to an attorney throughout the process. And then in addition to that, we will have the guardian ad litem program, which are volunteers in our community that serve on their own free time, their own free will, no compensation whatsoever, and they also have attorneys. So the guardian ad litem program usually has a representative present at every stage of the game. So at any given time, you have several attorneys and several folks up in your courtroom. In addition to, you may have foster parents, you may have relative caregivers, you may have all sorts of folks trying to let you know what they think is best for this child or these children.
Okay, and I suppose that the decision-making process can be very challenging because you're deciding where a child's going to live.
Right. Luckily for us, we live in a nation of laws, and we have statutes and we have rules, and if you follow those statutes and follow those rules and case law when needed, you have to follow them, and you have to take emotions out of it, because honestly, you have to think with your head and not your heart, and these cases are cases that will always tug at your heart,
And that's,
one way or the other.
And that's the law. You have to follow it. Sometimes we have to hold our nose and do it, but that goes with the oath.
It's tough, and a lot of the parents, you know, will break your heart, and especially if the children are in the courtroom and they see their parents and you see that very clear bond, and no matter how bad it was at home, these children want to be with mom or dad. It's very, very difficult to look at everybody in the eye and wish for the best, but follow the law and keep them separate. Or on the other hand, when things may not look quite right and you may not think in your gut things are quite right, but everything under the law is met, you may be putting them back together.
Yeah,
and again, fingers crossed for the best.
Right. Okay, let's talk about your appointment process. You went through the Judicial Nominating Commission.
I did.
And they recommend you to the governor.
It's true.
Let's talk about the timeline.
Okay.
When were you told by the governor that he had accepted you as a judge?
I received the call from Governor Scott on July 23rd, 2015.
And you started work when?
September 1st, 2015.
And in between that time, what did you do to prepare?
So I was in private practice. John Weifenbach and I had become partners years ago. So Weifenbach and Kaklis was our partnership. And I had to close down my practice and take care of all of my clients, whether active, inactive, right at the beginning of their case, right in the middle of their case, towards the end of their case. I had to make sure that everything was in order, that they were protected, that they had counsel that could step in, that all retainers were transferred, that all trust monies and cost monies were taken care of, refunded or transferred. And I basically had about 40 days, give or take, to close a 19-year practice and then step in to fill your shoes.
And how did you learn about what's going on now in dependency and delinquency court? How did you train yourself or educate yourself?
So I was extremely lucky to come and try to take your position. You carved out that month before I started, Judge Hayworth, you were able to make time for me, at least once a week, sometimes once, twice, 3 times a week, where I could shadow with you. So in the middle of shutting down my practice, I would allocate, a day or two in my office. I would allocate a day down here in Sarasota, and then another day in my office, and maybe another day in Sarasota, just to sit there and make sure I had a comfort level of what had changed, what was the same, how the players had changed, and how things were run in your courtroom.
What was interesting, too, is that you actually sat next to me on the bench, and of course the litigants get very nervous. This case is so serious, I need 2 judges. But anyway, that was one way we mentored, and the way that you got a grasp of how it was going to work and get a feel for the actual division.
So between you, I was extremely lucky, and in speaking with other judges in our circuit that I've known personally and professionally, I realized how lucky I was, because I had you mentoring me in the courtroom, on the bench, as often as possible. And then, of course, we had our chief judge, Judge Williams, also mentoring me approximately once a week on the nuts and bolts, on the how to be a judge. And so I had in the courtroom practice with you as well as behind the scenes with him. So I was extremely fortunate to have the two of you helping me out.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question and kind of winding things up here. What would you like the lawyers and the litigants to know when they come in front of Judge Dees about the way you're going to be treated and how you're going to approach their cases?
Well, first of all, juvenile court is a highly emotional place. And so there's a lot of attempts in my courtroom, and I don't care if it's my court deputies or the attorneys in the courtroom or myself, to de-escalate the emotions and let everybody know that it's going to be okay. So if people come in professionally, if they come in and treat each other with respect, if they come in with a common goal of trying to make things better for the family or the child in question, and everybody works towards that same goal, playing their own role, obviously, it's an adversarial process, they're going to get the exact same respect and professionalism from me. And it's a really well-run court. I'm very fortunate to have the people I have in that courtroom.
Well, Judge Dees, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing your experiences and your background. Judges are really like everybody else. We have the same concerns, family issues, etc., but judges have an enormous responsibility, and we're given challenging cases, challenging decisions, but I'm sure you're setting a high bar and a good standard, and nothing but good things I've heard about you. So continue on that track.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge Dees, for joining us today. I'd like to also thank our viewers. I'm Judge Lee Hayworth, and I'll see you again on Law in Sarasota on the Education Channel. This is Lee Hayworth signing off for Law in Sarasota. Thank you.
For more than 36 years, the Community Foundation of Sarasota County has worked one-on-one with estate planning attorneys and their client to make a lasting impact through philanthropy. The Community Foundations safeguard the charitable legacies of donors to ensure that they continue for years to come. Visit www.cfsarasota.org for more information.
As a voluntary organization of over 900 lawyers and judges, and a leader of the local legal community, the Sarasota County Bar Association advances professionalism, promotes practice development, encourages public service, fosters fellowship, and supports access to legal services for all. Visit www.sarasotabar.com for more information or call 941-861-8180.